You're listening to the Practical Wealth Show with Curtis May.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another great episode of the Practical Wealth Show. And so today I am honored. I have a guest. He has a great book called Wealth on Any Income. And so Rennie Gabriel is my guest, and we're going to talk about money. The 3 secrets to wealthy know that you don't. Okay. And more, right? Because when I do these calls, when I get brilliant people, this is actually consulting for Curtis. Y'all just get to listen in. So, Rennie, thank you for being on the Practical Wealth Show.
Terrific. Thank you, Curtis. And you pronounced it correctly as Rennie, because just like Kenny with an R.
Oh, good. I was like, oh, Curtis, you didn't pronounce it right. And matter of fact, I was going to read it. I just remember I lost it, but tell them a little about your background, and then we'll kind of get into your brilliance.
Yeah, well, I would say my brilliance started pretty late because I struggled with money most of my life. And the sad part about it, I recognize several things. One of them is people are not taught about money in school. Well, I mean, it makes sense. Teachers can't teach what they've never been taught.
Right.
And then parents also don't teach their children about money. And it's the same reason parents can't teach what they don't know.
Right.
And so most people go through life thinking they're supposed to know this stuff, like they're supposed to get it through osmosis, and it just doesn't work that way. And that's why credit issuers and banks can take advantage of people, because they don't know how to handle money. They don't know how to do things, simple things. By the way, while I say it's simple, whether you're talking about a budget or a spending plan, they're only simple if you know how to do it.
Right.
Like playing the piano for someone who's taking years of lessons is simple. But for me to walk up to a piano, I can't play it.
Right, exactly.
And for me to walk up and create a budget or a spending plan, I can't do it if I've never been instructed. And that's what the struggle was for the first 40 years of my life. And then I finally found out how to do this stuff. And the other embarrassing part, I was certified as a financial planner, and it's not in my coursework.
Wow.
And I quizzed CPAs, and I said, in your coursework, are you taught how to do personal budgets or to teach your clients how to do them? Not one CPA has told me this was a part of their coursework either.
And isn't that interesting? Because I tell people most wealth is lost by how people manage cash flow. So before you even get to investing, it's right out of Richest Man in Babylon. Part of all you earn is yours to keep.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And budget by expenses. Okay. And because if you can't budget your expenses, you don't have any way to make your goal multiply. I mean, it's so simple right out of that little book that's 80 years old. It's right there. And
100 years old, by the way.
100 years old. Okay.
Yeah.
Couldn't remember. I know it came out in the 30s, but I was like, it might have came out before then in pamphlets, right? But it's basic. Like people, it's like somebody said, you got to master the basics and never get off of it. And what I find is that typical advisors that's tedious. Like they don't really want to do that. They just want to move your money and get assets under management. But I've found that in working with this is that the rubber meets the road. Like when the money hits your account, what are you doing with it? Right.
Yep.
And that's whether it's business and personal. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just business. You just have more money that you can mess up.
Yeah, that's right.
And again, you get a tax problem real fast because you're not, nobody told you about setting aside a tax account. So you have some money to pay your estimated taxes. So, or is that just me not knowing how to do it? So I didn't know how to do it. I was a registered rep. Nobody taught me about any of that stuff. So
no, you're absolutely right. I mean, and it's the foundations which are crucial. One of the most important lessons I learned, let me give you an example of how bad things were for me. I was in sales, selling insurance and retirement plans and stuff like that, earning a good living. Each year I earned more and more money. My first year, which was in the 1970s, I doubled my income from being a teacher, $13,000. Okay, it doesn't sound like a lot for a whole year, but again, this is 1970s.
Right.
It kept growing and kept growing. Now, when I earned $13,000, I was short like $200 a month. By the time I'm earning over $100,000 a year, now I'm short $2,000 a month.
Wow.
And what I learned in a program, this is kind of sad. It was a 12-step program for people it was called Debtors Anonymous. And the first thing I learned was you deal with your expenses first and grow your income second. That turned everything around. And that's also where I learned how to do a budget out of a 12-step program.
Wow.
So when I applied the principles from this program, my income jumped by 50%. And I had all that money. I knocked out $24,000 of expenses and my income grew by another $50,000.
Because why did your income go up?
Well, there's two ways to look at that.
Okay.
One of them is the woo way,
Right.
which is to say, well, the universe recognized I now know how to handle money and gave me more of it. Or the second way to look at it is I now had the confidence that if I earned more money, I'd have something left over instead of just being deeper in debt.
I like both. We'll go with both.
Yeah.
There's a little bit.
Yeah, either one
of both. Right. That's funny. So what are the, I have my notes.
The three secrets of the wealth.
Yeah, the three secrets, but I was thinking about something from the, but no, I knew that one. Something else I was looking at you, but let's talk about that because that's probably a whole show.
Yeah, because it fits in here.
Yeah.
So I've got an acronym for those three secrets, and that really is the basis, and it's a foundational piece. This is not high finance or arbitrage or any of the rest of that stuff. So the three secrets acronym is AFI, which is easy to remember because it has nothing to do with the American Film Institute.
Okay.
The A stands for attitude, which is one of the things that I mentioned. My attitude shifted. Wealthy people have a different attitude than people who struggle with money, than people who are just on a paycheck. Yeah, even business owners can lack the correct attitude. And as an example, one of the attitudes has to do with spend less than you're earning. Well, how do you do that? You need to know how to do a budget or spending plan. Another one is that when it comes to looking at investments, you look at the big picture first and the details second. They're just a whole pile of attitudes which are so helpful. As a matter of fact, I wrote a book that says the attitudes of the wealthy, and there's 30 of them in that book. So I'll mention one more, and then we're going to go to something else. We'll talk about the F. So as another one, wealthy people ask questions instead of making statements. And that's probably one of the most important. As an example, well, Curtis, you'll have the answer to this question, but have you heard of the concept, pay yourself first?
Yes.
Yeah. We've been talking about the book, The Richest Man in Babylon.
Yeah.
Okay. When I ask most people if they've heard of it, they will say, yes, I've heard of that. That's not new to me. Maybe they've even said, I'll try that before. But the funny part is if I ask them to explain it, they can't do it. 9 out of 10 times, people will have heard of it and not be able to explain what it is, how it works, which also means they're not doing it.
Correct.
And so what wealthy people do, which is so different, is when they hear something familiar, they don't make statements like I've heard that before. They ask questions like, how would that work in my situation? Or where would I put the money? Or who can help me with that? Or when will I begin doing that? And that's a key attitude differentiator that wealthy people have. They ask questions when they hear familiar information.
So they don't think they know everything off the top, even though they're wealthy. We call it in our system the arrival syndrome. They don't think they've arrived. They always feel like that they can learn more and you're not there yet, because I find a lot of people suffer from.
I'm still reading books. I'm still learning, and I've got piles and piles of money, more money than I can live on, and I'm still learning.
There you go. I love it. So
the F stands for forms. We talked about a budget. Well, the wealthy look at the kind of forms a lot of people are familiar with, whether it's a balance sheet or an income and expense statement or a cash flow statement. They look at it differently than most people. Like, let's say a balance sheet. A lot of people will look at the assets they have and they'll count the home they're living in. That's not an asset that generates an income unless you're using it for Airbnb.
Right.
That's an item that creates expenses. There's insurance, there's utilities, there may be a mortgage payment, there are repairs, there's maintenance. The house sucks up money. It doesn't generate an income. It doesn't belong as an asset that people can look at as something they're going to be living on, like money in the bank, like investments that they have, like their retirement plans, or any of the rest of that stuff.
I love it. It's huge right there, because it's like, oh, this is my biggest asset. You're in trouble then, right? If they make more money, they want to go buy a bigger house, and they don't understand you. I said, oh, you got to light that. I have someone I'm thinking about that did that, had a great few years in their business and just bought this big house. And I was like, I don't know that's a good idea. And because you got to light it, you got to heat it, you got to pay taxes on it, you got to landscape it. I mean, it's a tremendous money suck.
Exactly. And one of the things I tell a lot of people who are talking about, I want to save up money to buy a house, I say, why not save up money to buy a multi-unit property and then have the tenants help pay the mortgage for you?
How much pushback do you get? Do you get, I guess it seems like you would, but what is that goes through, if you make that statement, what is any pushback or what is going through their mind when it will all these excuses come out of why they can't?
It has to do often in the family dynamics. And I have a lot of women as clients. However, I've also seen in marriages where the wife says, heck no, I want to have a house. I want to have a yard. I want it now. I don't want to buy a rental property or a multi-unit property first, even though that's going to be better off for them in the long run, because it has to do with the instant gratification. Their neighbors have houses, their friends have houses, and they want to be in that same position. And it's not a good financial decision, but it's an emotional decision. So I do get some pushback, and usually it's from the wife.
Right. And you want to keep up with the Joneses. I'll tell people, look, the Joneses are broke. Okay.
Yeah. You keep it. They bought the big screen TV,
yes,
the fancy car, and they're showing it off to all these people, and there's nothing behind it. There's a great book I read recently called The Psychology of Money. Addresses the situation of the difference between being rich and being wealthy. And rich is what you see. It's the watch that they're wearing. It's the car that they're driving. It's the clothes that they're wearing. If someone is rich and that's how they're spending it, you can see it. But the wealth, you don't see. You don't see how many apartment buildings I own. You don't see how much money I have in my stock portfolio. Right. You don't see the real estate portfolio. You just see I'm driving a 16-year-old car.
Right. That's right.
I could buy the most expensive Rolls Royce, but I don't do that.
Because it's against your philosophy. Yeah. Once you, again, it goes back to the attitude. And it's funny because people want to impress people. One time I was at a company and this guy took over as a president of the company, and he was like, they were like, hey, when are you going to have us come tour your house or all this stuff? Because what people do is there's an MLM, right?
Oh, yeah.
And they want to buy this stuff so they can be impressive, impress people. Yeah. And so this guy says, his name was Joe. He said, Joe says, listen, I have a nice house. I mean, it's a living. It's not a museum where you need to tour it, right? He says, listen, all worrying about all that dumb stuff. You need to have impressive financial statements. Okay. If you want to see something impressive, look at my financial statements. And he grabbed this book. It says, and he flipped it like it was a book, like it was like this thick. He says, now this is impressive. That's what you want to be impressed with. Looking at the balance sheet, looking at your assets. And that's really important. That's so often that you said that. Just look, how do you read a balance sheet?
Yes.
Because I don't even think like the way you look at it and the way accountant will look at it are different. Like they'll look at it and you'll see different things.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And not only that, when it comes to the balance sheet and what's an asset and what's a liability, I've helped CPAs through. Just because they can fill out tax returns doesn't mean they know anything about creating wealth.
Yes. But we could do a show on that. All right. So
yeah. So let's get to the I. So
yes.
AFI. So attitude, forms, and the I stands for investments. And wealthy people are not limited to stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Wealthy people usually are in control of their investments. When I buy a stock, it's up to the president of that company, the marketing people, to make that company grow in value. And I have no input into it whatsoever. The only input I have in terms of the stock is buying it or selling it, or maybe doing covered call option writing.
Right.
That's it. I don't have any input into the underlying value of the company. With real estate, I have control. As an example, I can choose where I buy a property. I can choose who's going to rent it from me. I can choose how I'm going to remodel it, if I'm going to sell it, if I'm going to do a tax deferred exchange. I have all these items I control in that investment. I don't have in a stock. And wealthy people generally control their investments.
Control is key. It's interesting you can make the jump from like a financial advisor, what I call a paper advisor, to that, because that's a lot of times if you'll talk to regular guys, if it's not in their grid, that it's like, what? It's like you can't do that. That's not a good thing because they can't offer it. They can't make any money off of it.
Yeah.
And you want key. That's what I see with people, because I work with those people. They want control. They know in their heart that they can make their business or their real estate make more money than some fund manager they've never met.
Oh, exactly. I had a funniest conversation with someone who does Facebook ads. And for every dollar he spends on a Facebook ad, he gets a $2 to $3 profit. And I was asking him, how much are you spending? And it was like, he was spending $30,000 a month on Facebook ads, which would generate $90,000 to $120,000 in profit. And he said, yeah, Rennie, but I want to learn more about investing in the stock market like all these other people I know. And they're earning 10, 12% a year on their portfolios.
Right.
Wait a second. Well, slow down. So you want to know how to make 10% or 12% a year when you're currently earning 100% a month.
Let's
all of a sudden, that bag is,
that's right.
Oh yeah. In my business, I make 100% a month. Why would I want to earn 10% a year?
That is so true. That's what you gotta like. Sometimes you just gotta say it back to them out loud and just let it sink in. And a lot of times with what you're doing, I think hopefully in a smaller way, I'm doing the same thing, is to get them to like I told people, like I'd rather have you put rather than funding a Roth for $300 a month, I'd have you if they're in business, I'd rather have you put the $300 in Facebook ads or something that you understand that you control. And so most regular financial advice is really designed for employees, right?
That's correct. Yes.
And you can't do that. Like it's okay, but it's only going to take you so far. And then you want, what I've been finding is that if you study it, let's study the Forbes, the billionaire list.
Yes.
Most of them weren't billionaires. Only 8% of people on the list that inherited their money. But they build businesses.
Yes.
And they buy real estate. And as like the path, right? So to me, success leaves clues, but it's disguised as work. And that's the problem.
Yeah, it's funny. Yes, it's disguised as work. See, one of the advantages I had is I owned a pension administration company, and my clients who were making more money than they knew what to do with were putting in qualified retirement plans. But the wealthiest people I had were those who were investing their money in real estate. I said, oh, how interesting. They're taking the money from their business, which is doing well, and then they're buying real estate with it. That looks like an intelligent thing to do. Yeah. So I just, like you said, success leaves clues. I copied what worked.
I love it. You know what I've learned from, I'm not finished yet, but reading your book, and then from we had a conversation because I was on your show, is one of your drivers is giving, charitable giving. And I wanted to, which is actually a wealth principle if you're, and why, what's important to you about that? And have you always gave, or did it something that started later in life? Like, and then how do you teach on that?
Well, when I didn't have much money, what I gave was time. I would go to homeless shelters. I would help feed homeless people. I would distribute blankets or clothing because I didn't have the money.
Right.
So I've always been somewhat philanthropically inclined, but when I got to the stage where I wanted to help other people to become philanthropic, I needed to lead by example. And so I donate 100% of the profits from my teaching other people how to handle money, I donate to various animal and veteran charities. As an example, one of them, Sheltered a Soldier, rescues dogs from environments where they'd be euthanized and trains them as service animals for soldiers that might have otherwise committed suicide. So they're saving 2 lives at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's wonderful. It's funny, I heard you should give of your time, your talent, and your treasury. And so you start out, you didn't have treasury, so you gave time, right?
Yes.
And so, but we can always give, even sometimes like my wife is like, I'm making her in charge of the giving, right? She's like, cause we were talking about before, Black colleges and certain things.
Yes.
We'll do it, but it's even as little stuff. Like, so to me, it's like, if we have, family members that are not doing quite as well and you got kids, we'll get their book supplies for the new year, that kind of stuff, like where you can see make an impact, that kind of stuff. And so I'm excited that you encourage that, because I don't think people outside of their church, maybe they don't really have a strategic plan for giving. How do you, and talk about in how you manage cash flow, how do you integrate that in your cash flow management teachings, that you look, this needs to be a line item in your budget?
The simplest thing is just tithing, which most people are familiar with, whether they just set aside 10% or 20% or whatever it is to the causes that touch their heart. We designed a program and it's called Wealth with Purpose. It's a 9-step program that takes people from wherever they are to a place where they can be philanthropic and choose to work instead of have to work.
Okay.
And so it's built into our program. The amount is discretionary from the standpoint of every person chooses what cause they want to donate to that is important to them.
So 2 things I want you to tell us how to get in touch with you and what you're excited about. But before I want you to, is there anything, this is my catch-all question, anything I should have asked you that I didn't ask you that you wanted to talk about?
I don't have an answer to that question of what you should have asked me, because I think we had a great conversation.
I think so too.
And the way for people to get hold of me is to just go to my website, Wealth on Any Income. And if they put /TEDx, they'll hear the TED Talk where I talk about how I went from broke to being philanthropic, as well as getting this 9-step roadmap to complete financial choice that I just spoke about. So my book is Wealth on Any Income. My podcast is Wealth on Any Income. My website is Wealth on Any Income.
All right. Y'all hear the theme there. Okay.
Yeah. The theme is based on the fact I'm simple.
All right. I love that. Yeah. So we will make sure that I have all those links. I believe we'll put them in the show notes. And so y'all go out there and reach out to Rennie and be charitable, because I think that charity starts at home, and it's a lot of, just if we do it individually, because we're always saying, well, what are they going to do? Or is Jeff Bezos' wife's going to give money to Black colleges or whatever? You can't wait for that. You have to, what can you do with $100 a month? Whatever. Because if now you get 1 million people doing that, now you got a lot of stuff going on. So I appreciate you. I appreciate that. And Rennie, I thank you for joining us on the Practical Wealth Show. I know you're busy. And so I appreciate you spending a little time with me today. And I got a page of notes here.
Thank you, Curtis. It was a pleasure to be on the show. And thank you for being on my show as well.
My pleasure. So we look forward to just staying in touch, and anything I can help to promote what you got going on, please just shoot me an email and let me know.
Thank you so much, Curtis.
All right, guys, listen, another great episode. Make sure you reach out to Rennie and go out there and make it a profitable day. And reach out. So I don't care what income you're at, you can create wealth. And so that's what Rennie's going to teach you. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Practical Wealth. To access the show notes and resources, go to practicalwealthshow.com. To get your questions on the show, go to practicalwealthshow.com. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before you make any investment decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Practical Wealth. Written permission must be granted before syndication